Hello everyone, this is Jem Estrella, and today is my birthday, which means I'm 1 year closer to death and being remembered as a total loser. My life sucks in some ways. Anyways, since I've been posting videos on my Rumble and have yet to find a spot where people can ask me questions freely, I decided now it would be a good time to bring something here on YouTube for once and not just another trailer. And for this video, I'm going to do a top 9 countdown. Why top 9? Because it's my list, not yours. Let's begin the countdown. What makes a movie stand out? Like, really stand out from thousands if not millions of movies out there? Stand out so much that people still talk about it to this day? The answer is both easy and hard at the same time, as it seems like with some movies, it takes some scary groundbreaking ideas to dazzle the crowd, while with other movies, not much effort as some people, usually highly opinionated whiners, are going to complain. But no matter the route, these movies had done something right and had their heated receptions pay off in the long run. As Eric Bischoff himself said it best, controversy creates cash. And today, we're going to take a look at these movies on my little countdown I made. But before we get into this, I need to set up a few rules here first. I don't want to set myself up as some stupid inept moron making a list with no rules in particular, anything goes, and just screw up everything. So here they are. Rule number 1. This is not a best of or worst of list. This countdown isn't about the quality of these movies while leaving an impact, though I will give you my quick thoughts on each movie that made the cut. This list is about the controversy these films left after their releases and which are the ones I found the most interesting. Rule number 2. These movies have to be the ones that I have personally seen at least once in my lifetime. So if I miss something obvious like Last Tango in Paris, Pink Flamingos, or 128 Days of Sodom, they don't count because I want to stick to the films I've seen and what impressions they left on me when I first saw them. And rule number 3. Most importantly, to remember that this is just my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. I'm just giving you my personal thoughts in my personal top 9 list, and if you have an issue with it, not my problem. Go make your own list and make that your definitive top 10 list in your own world. I can personally take trolling and criticism, but I will not deal with any stupid crybabies who think that the whole world revolves around them. So, you either enjoy the list or get the hell out of here. Not my problem. Anyways, here we go. Number 9. Antichrist by Lars von Trier. The movie is about an unnamed married couple who lived a normal life until one day when they had sex in their apartment and left their baby boy Nick unsupervised as he climbed up a window and fell down to his death. The mother of the child was struck with absolute grief and spent a whole month in the hospital dealing with the loss. The father of the child, who was a therapist, didn't think therapy was working out for them, so he decided to take care of her personally through psychotherapy. He learned that one of her fears was nature, and he planned to perform some kind of special type of therapy by hiking into the woods and spend time in the cabin together, isolated from civilization. And from that point on, the story gets really crazy. So what's the deal with this film? During its release and shown on film festivals, the movie was met with a polarized reception because of the content being shown, and the film was released uncut and given no warning of what the content of the film had, which included intense sex scenes, animal brutality, nightmare-inducing imagery, body mutilation, and many other things that I don't want to go into full detail, as not only would it spoil the movie, but some of the parts go too far that I feel like I might cross a line describing it in this video. In fact, it's been reported that some people have actually fainted watching this movie. It was so disturbing and graphic that France banned the movie altogether, and getting 2 versions of the same movie, where the other was heavily toned down on the content, one was called Catholic and the other was called Protestant, though interestingly, the movie would be released as it is in multiple places. So with all of that aside, is the movie worth watching? The answer is yes. It is a brilliantly done psychological horror film that deals with loss and trauma. The cinematography is beautiful, the art direction is mesmerizing, and the film is still gorgeous even to this day that it has to be seen. But it is not for the faint of heart, because there were some scenes that go too far and it can get quite scary and even disgusting at times. So if you plan on watching this film, I recommend getting a barfing bag on standby before watching. Trust me, you're gonna need it.
I became afraid, and I stopped writing.
What was different the last time?
I heard a sound.
Number 8. The Passion of the Christ by Mel Gibson. The movie is about the last 12 hours of Jesus Christ before his death, from the time he prayed to his Father to protect his followers John, Peter, and James, to the betrayal of Judas, to the gruesome beating of Jesus Christ leading to his crucifixion and ending it with his resurrection. I'm sure this goes without saying with movies about religion, but most people who are followers of a certain faith tend to have a problem with a few movies based off stories from their religion. So, what's the deal here? Many people felt that the sequence of Jesus Christ getting executed was overly violent and excessive, went on the brutality for too long, and suspecting that the whole thing was some kind of sick kink Gibson had while filming those parts. Even in one issue from Time magazine calling it one of the most ridiculously violent films of all time. It got so bad to the point where the film had to be re-released with a new edited version that toned down the violence. Christians and critics also pointed out how the movie was too anti-Semitic as it portrayed the Jews very negatively, to the point where people said that they felt more like evil stereotypes of Jewish people, feeling like it took some liberties turning the biblical story into an anti-Semitic propaganda film. The movie's portrayal of the Jews gave Mel Gibson quite a lot of heat from the Jewish community. Despite the film's success and the movie getting praised for its production, the direction of having the story being told in a different language, having some support from a few Christians, and holding back no punches, the movie is still talked about as some felt that The Passion of the Christ was just some silly anti-Semitic or a long snuff film that didn't deserve any success after its release. So with all of that aside, is the movie worth watching? In all honesty, no. Although I can admit that the film does a pretty good job at capturing that old Holy Bible era feel, and it does have good production values, the movie just wasn't all that exciting, and the brutal sequence really wasn't as horrifying as many people say it is. Now, I'm not saying that it wasn't gruesome, the whole thing was kind of rough to watch, but as someone who had seen a lot of movies with blood and gore, some of which could be considered body horror like the Hellraiser series, or torture porn like the Saw movies, of which had really intense scenes of absolute pain, it just makes The Passion of the Christ look like a small playground accident. If you guys found the movie to be this grand experience to witness the Lord and Savior's final moments of praising his sacrifice, that's perfectly fine. But to me, it's just a long, boring snuff film. If you want a better movie about Jesus Christ, then I recommend The Last Temptation of Christ. Overall, a much better film. Number 7. Borat! Cultural Learnings of America for Make Benefit Glorious Nation of Kazakhstan by Larry Charles. A satirical mockumentary about Borat, a unique fellow to say the least, leaves his home country of Kazakhstan to make a documentary about the culture and society of America. Along the way, a series of silly foreign hijinks ensues, with Borat being a complete jerk who is a racist, sexist, and of course, anti-Semitic. During his journeys throughout the whole country, all while poking fun at the ignorance of an American citizen through his secret little schemes. The character Borat is a satirical character that was made from this satirical comedy show called The Ali G Show, and the humor of Borat consists of him having extremely ridiculous first world views of all culture and society by being inconsistent with his morals, being vulgar and inappropriate around people. which would lead to other people around him to reveal their biased principles that they wouldn't otherwise reveal to the public, and more often than not become the punchline themselves before Borat. I'm pretty sure you can guess what the deal is with this movie. The movie had garnered a lot of criticism for many things. The style of comedy, which I mentioned before, wasn't that well known to the mainstream audience, and those who have watched it without being familiar to the formula must have been baffled with how far the racial humor went. Oh, but it gets better. Because many of the scenes that featured a couple of people in certain skits were all done live, with Baron Cohen, who plays Borat in the film, remaining in character while making a fool out of anyone falling for his shtick as they partake in these scenes in the movie, which would lead to several of the actual people in the film filing lawsuits for defamation of character, and even writing letters to the filmmakers talking about how much they hated being shown on camera on a bad light. On top of that, many people of the Kazakhstan government were not too happy about the movie, as it felt like the Borat character was portraying Kazakhstan in a very negative way. Though, ironically, some of the higher-ups from Kazakhstan were grateful of the film, sparking tourists for coming over to the country, feeling like the movie Borat put Kazakhstan on the map. The movie would be banned in a few countries, mainly around the Arabic nations, and even in some places around that area where the movie would be released, had to be heavily edited to tone down the humor. So with all of that aside, is the movie worth watching? Even though I'm someone who is generally not a big fan of racist humor and find it to be boring and very predictable, I can't deny the genius of the character and what an impact Borat left with this movie by making all of the people that he poked fun of in this movie look like idiots. Perhaps the character isn't as stupid as he appears. Borat is not one of those movies that I would personally watch over and over again and recommend to anyone close to me, but if you have the spare time and if you're looking for something racially insensitive but genius at the same time, then it wouldn't hurt to take a look. It is worth a watch.
This is my town of Cusack. This here Orkin, the town rapist. Naughty, naughty.
Number 6. The Interview by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg. The Interview is a comedy movie about Dave Skylark and Aaron Rappaport, two goofballs working at a talk show, were assigned to a mission from a CIA agent to assassinate Kim Jong-un. Yes, really. No fictional Korean character, the actual Kim Jong-un. And the movie is basically them reluctantly going along with the mission, all while they spend time with Kim Jong-un and having an oddly friendly time with them while some silly hijinks goes on. With a plot like this, comedy film or not, was anyone really surprised that it would garner some heat from North Korea? So, the deal was this. The North Korean government took issue with the film and directly threatened the US over the movie. A group from Korea called the Guardians of Peace sent in computer hackers to hack Sony in response, which led the studio to go in full panic mode as they pulled the plug in the film's marketing, canceling Rogen and Franco's publicity appearances, not releasing the movie in theaters, and Sony making a statement on the film's cancellation. This move would spark a lot of criticism to Sony, as many people said that it was an act of cowardice on their end for letting a foreign government decide the film's cancellation. Given the fact that films like Team America World Police, a film with a very satirical portrayal of Kim Jong-un that was released 10 years before The Interview, and the remake of Red Dawn, which was a film about the US being invaded by North Korea and the story centered around the Americans fighting back their own, of which that movie was released 2 years before The Interview, and many other films out there that had the Koreans as the villains, further showed just how unreasonably paranoid Sony was. It was so embarrassing that Barack Obama himself said that the people who canceled the movie were simply overreacting. The film would eventually be released, but only by digital download. As far as I know, this is the first time a film had ever been released under a strange set of circumstances, and hopefully will not be repeated again. So with all of that said, is the movie worth watching? No. Not really. It's not a completely horrible film, but it's nothing special either. It has its moments, but that's about it. It's just a stupid comedy movie that had about as much quality as the rest of those dollar bin movie junk you'd find at your local market near you. And as for Sony, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Your cowardly actions were funnier than the film itself. And that's saying something.
You're handsome, competent, suave. How dare they? I pretend like their insults don't get to me. But they do. You know what's more destructive than a nuclear bomb? Words.
Number 5. American Sniper by Clint Eastwood. The movie is based off a memoir written by Christopher Scott Kyle, a man who served for the United States Navy SEALs and is one of the best marksmen the world has ever heard. The man served 4 tours during the Iraqi War and had done a lot of acts and left an incredible service that many people would call him a real war hero. And this movie tells us his life story, and it was directed by one of the Hollywood all-time greats, Clint Eastwood. So, what's the deal? Despite being based off of a real-life story, the film would at times take liberties on the book. For example, there was one scene where Chris saw a news report of the bombings of the United States Embassy, which led to him wanting to join the Navy. But this never happened in real life, nor was it ever pointed out in the book. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Many news sources would talk about the film's accuracies and how it differs from Chris's life story in the book. Mustafa, who played a major part in the film and portrayed him as he's like a rival of Chris, was barely mentioned in the book, and Chris himself stated that he's never met the guy and refuses to put his name down because he shot his friend. Some critics had said that the movie portrayed Iraqi citizens as negative stereotypes, while others felt like the movie didn't do enough to give us a wider and clearer view of the Iraq War, as well as leaving out a few controversial moments in his life after service and over-exaggerating a few elements from the book. On top of that, the film's box office success would turn into some kind of political platform to stand on, as Republicans would stand proudly and support the film, while Democrats call foul and criticize the movie. And of course, there's the infamous prop baby scene where Bradley Cooper, who plays Chris Kyle in the movie, is holding a baby, and it's so blatantly obvious that the baby was a doll, and an audience during one screening of the film bursted out laughing when the scene happened. Apparently, the reason why they couldn't use an actual baby is because both toddlers were unable to be filmed, with one of them being sick and the other just no-showed, which led to Clint Eastwood just saying, "Give me the dog, kid," according to Jason Hall, who was the screenwriter of the film. So with all of that said, is the film worth watching? Yes. Yes, it is. American Sniper is such an exciting film to watch from beginning to end, and it still is to this day. Regardless of how accurate the movie really was to the man's story, the fact is, no movie can fully replicate a real-life story down to perfection. There is a reason why the term based on a real story is used. The best that any filmmaker could do is to make a good film while sticking true to the source material as close as it could possibly get. And I personally don't care if this movie is supportive of one party or not. I'm not a political nutcase. I'm not part of both parties, and I don't watch movies for a political statement. Anyone who does are just a couple of crazy one-sided morons with a biased point of view, and I don't want to be friends with. For what it is, American Sniper is a good movie, and it is worth a watch.
Oh, that's not me, no.
What's not you?
I was just protecting my guys. They were trying to kill our soldiers, and I'm willing to meet my creator and answer for every shot that I took.
Number 4. A Clockwork Orange by Stanley Kubrick. Ah yes, the poster boy of controversial movies when the topic comes up. A Clockwork Orange is a movie based off of a dark dystopian black comedy novel made by Anthony Burgess. It's about this evil man named Alex DeLarge, who is the leader of his own gang called the Droogs. And they spend all of their time committing crimes and vile acts to anyone who's near them, and Alex takes so much enjoyment like it's a drug to him. I really wish I could go into more detail on the plot, but I don't want to give anything away, as if I feel like it would do a disservice to the film and for anyone who hadn't watched it yet, despite a few scenes that people still remember without actually watching it. So for those of you who haven't watched the movie yet and are new to this, you're probably wondering, what's the deal? This was simply a case of a somewhat raunchy movie that was released way ahead of its time, and for 1971, people hadn't seen anything like A Clockwork Orange before it came out. Because of this, the movie was considered too sexually explicit and overly violent back in the day. The film's US release got an X rating, with Roman Catholics calling the film obscene and rated it C for condemned, forcing Stanley to later make a minor edit to give a film an R rating over in the US. Oh, but it gets better over in Europe, because the movie's uncut version was shown in UK theaters, which led to the British authorities to criticize the film for being too extreme for all audiences. To make matters worse, one prosecutor from a trial of a 14-year-old kid who was accused of manslaughter would reference the film as if it had some kind of relevance to the case. Furthermore, one 16-year-old killer pleaded guilty for a murder of an old man in Buckinghamshire, and pointing out that the movie and his friends were talking about it to beat up an old man like the scenes that were shown on the film. The audience reaction and response was so loud and extreme that Kubrick himself asked the movie to be taken out of cinemas, not to mention the many bannings and censorship battles the film would go through in multiple countries. Here we go. In Ireland, the film was banned in April 10th of 1973 and would be released uncut until March 17th of 2000. In Brazil, the film would be banned under military dictatorship until 1978 when it would be re-released with black dots covering private parts. In Malta, the movie would be banned indefinitely until the ban was lifted in 2000 where it would be shown in theaters. In South Africa, the film would be banned under some kind of regime for 13 years until 1984 when it could be released in cinemas with the condition of only people above the age of 21 to see it. In Spain, the film was supposed to be shown in a film festival under the control of Francisco Franco until the students protested, forcing the university to be closed for 2 months until it would be shown later uncut in cinemas. In Singapore, the film would be banned for more than 30 years until being finally released uncut on October 28th, 2011 during a film festival. And that's like in other places like South Korea, some parts of Canada, and probably other countries out there that I haven't mentioned where the film may or may not be banned altogether. Oh boy, that's a lot of censorship and bannings. So, with all of that aside, is the movie worth watching? Yes, it is! It's Stanley freaking Kubrick, for God's sakes. That'd be like missing out on Berserk in the world of anime and manga. People still remember the movie, and for good reason. It's dark, humorous, engaging, and memorable for the story and characters. It's honestly kind of a bummer that the film was released way before shocker movies would even become a thing, and had to go through a lot of battles just to be seen in other countries. Thankfully though, we live in an era where it's easy to find movies like this, and A Clockwork Orange is still a classic even to this day. Definitely a must-watch.
You have to be cured.
It was horrible.
Violence is a very horrible thing. That's what you're learning now.
Number 3. Monty Python's Life of Brian by Terry Jones. A satirical black comedy movie about, well, the life of Brian. He was born on the same day as Jesus Christ from a stable next door and is mistaken to be the Messiah, and from that point on, a lot of funny stuff happens. I'll spare you the usual question and say, yes! This movie is funny and worth watching. It's Monty Python, man. These guys are so good, even their worst skits are better than anything Happy Madison has to offer on their best days. So it should be a no-brainer that this movie is good. That's why I didn't want to spoil much while talking about the plot synopsis. So, what's the deal with this movie? The movie is a satire to the Christian religion and poking fun of it. Of course, many religious groups were not laughing at the movie and called it blasphemous, leading to many Christians protesting the film and even had a few countries banning the movie from being shown in theaters. All of which only seemed to have fueled interest in the film to the public eye. The filmmakers took advantage of it by marketing the film poking fun of the controversy, saying things like, "So funny, it was banned in Norway," or quoting one of the statements made by Christians criticizing the movie for satirizing the religion. The one scene that garnered a lot of heat from Christians is the crucifixion musical scene with Brian and a few others tied into crosses, which many of the protesters felt like it was a very disrespectful scene that mocked the painful execution of Jesus Christ and was basically turning that into a comical musical number, with many of the sufferers partake in a song like it's no big deal. The director Terry Jones would respond to the criticism of this scene saying, "Any religion that takes a form of torture into an icon that they worship seems to me a pretty sick sort of religion, quite honestly." While every Python would go on record and say that crucifixion was a standard and common form of execution back in the old times. Speaking of Monty Python, this movie would lead to the crew going through some debates with journalists and bishops arguing about the movie. Some of the Pythons didn't come to an agreement with the movie's tone. Every Python, including Terry Jones, has said that the film was not, nor was it intended to hurt people's faith. Terry Jones in one interview said that the movie was not blasphemous because it doesn't touch on belief at all, saying that it was heretical because it touches on dogma and the interpretation of belief rather than belief itself. Either way, the movie is still hilarious. Most religious groups out there, you really need to stop taking things too seriously.
Do you find it visible when I say the name? Dickus.
Number 2. The Birth of a Nation by D.W. Griffith. Oh boy, we're heading to the old times, and this movie was certainly a heat magnet. The Birth of a Nation is based off a novel written by Thomas Dixon Jr. The book was called The Klansman, a historical romance of the Ku Klux Klan. And both the book and the movie portrays the Klansmen as noble and heroic figures, while the black men, specifically the free Negroes kind, are all bloodthirsty, violent monsters killing all whites during the Civil War and Reconstruction era. With a plot description like that, it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out what the deal was about. And if you're thinking that this movie just started to get a bad buzz many decades after its release and it was only acceptable at the time, you'd be wrong. Even in 1915, the movie stirred up quite a lot of controversy, even before the film would even be released in cinemas. When it did, it left a massive impact to society, with riots happening throughout many major cities around the US, provoking white people to start attacking black people, and the KKK giving a lot of support of the film for over-glorifying them. Studies showed that statistics of racist riots and lynchings spiked a month after the film's premiere. Things got so bad that at least 12 mayors did everything in their power to ban the movie, and the AAACP protesting and boycotting the movie because of the overwhelming hate-filled crimes happening around that time. The controversy that the film might have had in the modern times is nothing compared to what it received in the 1910s. So with all of that said, is the movie worth watching? I can't believe I'm gonna say this, but yeah, I think it's worth a look. Because this movie is so racist and so shameless, you can't help but be amazed at how primitive the film was with the standards of a darker period in history. You could never get away with a movie like this nowadays. And for that, it has to be seen to be believed. Like it or not, The Birth of a Nation is an important landmark of cinema history. It's a film that set a standard of a template on how a film should be made around that time period, as well as bringing in technical innovations that revolutionized filmmaking since it came out, in the same way King Kong would do in 1933. Is it racist? Yes. And there's no doubt that it left such a nasty aftermath back in the day when it was shown in theaters. But for what it is, it's an interesting piece of cinema history that deserves to be looked at least once. Just don't get too offended over it. And finally, number 1. Cannibal Holocaust by Ruggero Deodato. Cannibal Holocaust is a found footage horror-like movie that tells the story of an American film crew going missing at the Amazons as a rescue team were sent in to look for the missing crew. All that remained was the footage they recorded for a documentary, only to reveal the horror they've been through and blurring the lines of who were the real cannibals. That's all I want to give out for the plot. So, what is the deal with this movie? The controversy comes from the content of the movie, which featured cannibalism, actual animal cruelty, gore, SA, and loads of horrific things you could imagine in the jungle to be shown in a motion picture. Now, it's one thing to make the violence in the film brutal and scary, but this movie took it a step further. The film was presented in a way that makes it seem like the footage that was recorded by the missing crew was found lost footage, and the movie's raw and harsh production made the violence of the film so authentic that many people thought that the violence was actually real. To further paint the illusion of realism, all of the actors were signed to a contract to not appear in any form of public media for a whole year after the film's release, which led to many rumors of the movie being a snuff film as the characters that actually died in real life. 10 days after its premiere in Mulan, the movie would be confiscated under the orders of a local magistrate, and Deodato would be arrested and charged for obscenity and later be charged with murder because of the death rumors. And because of that, the film would be banned from at least 40 countries and heavily censored for DVD and digital releases, many of which give out a warning for animal cruelty. To this day, debates of the film's harsh methods to make the violent content very barbaric on camera and showing animal cruelty would still go on, as some critics, historians, and even activists felt that the filmmakers pushed too far and are still seen as a serious issue that can be considered unethical. Deodato himself would later regret showing animal cruelty and said, "I was stupid to introduce animals." So, with all of that said, is the movie still worth watching? Oh hell yeah! I think a lot of people should watch this movie, because this movie too is also an important piece of cinema history, as it set the grounds for a movie genre that we now know as found footage, with movies like The Blair Witch Project trying to replicate the same magic that Cannibal Holocaust did back in 1980. But unlike The Blair Witch Project, a film that I personally think is mediocre and the production wasn't that great to begin with, Cannibal Holocaust does a far superior job at blurring the lines between fiction and reality, to the point where there were times I thought I was watching some kind of leaked jungle footage, and it is one of the rare movies out there that actually scares me, which is a huge achievement in my book. While I do think it is a good movie that's worth watching, much like Antichrist, I don't recommend it to anyone with a squeamish stomach. And believe me, the movie can get pretty sick at times, and I could imagine that animal cruelty is something that will ruffle a few feathers to people and find it completely awful to watch. So if you're going to watch this movie, prepare yourself for the worst. That's all I can honestly say. Just prepare yourself.
I wonder who the real cannibals are.
So anyways, that's my top 9 list. If you enjoyed it, great. I'm not going to beg for you to like and subscribe to my channel. If I'm worth your time, I'm worth your time. Cool, whatever. But as for me, I'm more concerned about what could I do for the future, and it seems like things are not looking up, and it looks like I may not even matter in the end. But regardless, have a good day. I'm Jem Estrella. I'm the halfway reasonably insane individual who just talks here. See you later.